Today we will look at Second Chronicles 25 through 28. We're adding one of the chapters of tomorrow, and then on Monday we'll catch up with 20. We'll start on 29 there and do Monday's reading. And of course, on this Saturday, I always remind you that tomorrow is the first Sunday of June 7th, and we'll have worship live on Facebook at 9 from Mabel with Holy Communion, and you're always, as normal, welcome to join us from home in that service and in the home of Holy Communion, and then worship at 10:30 at Our Savior's in McHenry as a normal Sunday morning for us that way. In these chapters today, we continue with the stuff that's going on in Judah mainly, and a little bit of Israel, but mainly Judah, and this has been the focal point of most of the book of Second Chronicles for sure. Amaziah begins to reign as king when he was 25, and he reigned, it says, 29 years, and he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, but it says not with a true heart. And I can understand that, doing what's right, but not being 100% convinced, or not being maybe 100% true to what he's doing. As soon as the royal power, it says, was in his hands, he killed the servants who had murdered his father, but yet he followed the law of Moses in that, he didn't punish the children of those people, and he let them live. But he assembled people and set them by their ancestral houses, bringing order back to some of the chaos that had been there, and brought many of them for service, for war. And then he hired 100,000 warriors from Israel. And because, he didn't feel he had enough, evidently. But a man of God, it says, came to him and said, "O king, do not take these hired people from Israel along with you into battle, because it will not go well for you if you do that." And he said, "Well, I just paid a whole bunch of money for that, 100 talents. I mean, what am I going to do? Just let them go?" And yeah, just let them go, because if you take them along, it's not going to go well with you. So he heeded the words of that prophet. He let those soldiers go, but they got angry because of that. And before we get to that part, Judah, under the king went, and they were successful in their battle that King Amaziah led them on. But those 100,000 troops that he had bought and paid for were upset, and as they went back to Samaria, they killed many people on their way and took much booty, plunder, as they were going. And here in verse 14 is where Amaziah, it wasn't so true. He brought some of the gods of the people of Seir and set them up as his gods, worshipped them. And then it says the Lord was angry with Amaziah. And a prophet said to him, a prophet, not named, but a prophet, "Why have you resorted to a people's gods that could not deliver their own people from you?" Why would you worship the gods of the people that you defeated with the power of your God behind you? Why would you be that two-faced? Why would you do such a thing? And but the king wasn't happy with him, and he says, Have I made you a counselor? But the prophet says, "I know that God is determined to destroy you because you have done this and not listened to my advice." And again, it's not the prophet's advice, it's God's advice. So the king took counsel from others and sent to King Joash and said, "Come, let us look one another in the face. Let's have battle. Let's look one another in the face." It is just, prove ourselves against each other or something that way. But it just doesn't go as Amaziah would hope. And it says, verse 20, but Amaziah would not listen. It was God's doing in order to hand them over, because he had sought the gods of Edom, the false gods, because he had worshipped falsely that way. So Judah was defeated by Israel. And Judah went home kind of with its tail tucked between its legs. And King Joash and the army had seized the gold and silver and the vessels that were in the house. And as he was, returning home with all of that plunder, they were overjoyed, of course, with all of the plunder that they had had. And King Amaziah then, is no longer. And the people of Judah then took Uzziah, who was 16, and made him king to succeed his father Amaziah. And it's, the lineage of King David continues down through all of these different kings, which is what God had said. But Uzziah was mostly faithful. He rebuilt Eloah and he restored it to Judah, and he reigned for 52 years, and he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, is what it says, and that is such a compliment to these, to these kings when they did what was right in the sight of the Lord. And as long as he sought the Lord made him prosper. He went to war against the Philistines and was successful. And all of these good things happened because of his following God. But in verse 16 we have that word but. But when he had become strong, he grew proud to his destruction. He became proud. He thought, hey, I've done all of this on my own, and he entered the temple of the Lord to make offering, but as the priest went in and said, it is not for you, Uzziah, to make the offering. It is the priest's duty. The king kind of overstepped his, his rights there, and was found out to be lacking in that. Chapter 27 deals with Jotham, who was 25 when he began to reign. He reigned for 16 years, I think it was, and he did what was good in the sight of the Lord, slept with his ancestors in the city of David, and there's not very much, in chapter 27 about that king. It's a pretty short chapter. 28, again, is a fairly lengthy chapter. It's a page and 3/4 or so in my Bible. And it talks about King Ahaz. And the very first thing it says, he did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord. And I had that, he did not do. I had that underlined from reading previously and all of that. But he sacrificed. He made offerings on the high places. He rebuilt many of the altars to the false gods. And verse 5 says, the Lord God gave him into the hand of the king of Aram, who defeated him and took captive a great number of the people. And the people of Israel took captive of their own. So Aram, he was the king of Israel, and took captives of all of these Israelites from Judah. And they were going out, and it says, because the Lord is angry with Judah, he gave them into your hand. You have killed them in rage. He's reached up to heaven. Now you intend to subjugate them, male and female, as your slaves. Now listen, send them back, all of you that you have taken of your kindred, send them back. Don't bring them into here and don't make them slaves. You shall not bring them captive here. And for your guilt is already great. For your guilt is already great because they have abandoned God. They haven't followed God and worshiped God. And so if they were to take their fellow Israelites captive and bring them home as slaves, their sins will be even greater. So then King Ahaz sends to Assyria for help. And the Lord, it's verse 19, the Lord brought Judah low because of the way the king, had done all of this working and, not trusting in God completely that way. And, in verse 22, in the time of his distress, he became yet more faithless to the Lord. And he sacrificed to the gods of Damascus. And chapter 28 again ends with the death of King Ahaz. And how he was, but they did not bring him to the tombs of the kings of Israel. Again, he had not been faithful to God. He had not been a faithful leader. And the people then realized that and didn't give him the dignity or the honor of being buried with the other kings.